Today we're checking out the version 2 of the Total Distortion Worship from Lichtlaerm. So as many of you might remember, I did demo the original Total Distortion Worship back after the last NAMM. I've been hanging out with Daniel from the Lichtlaerm booth, as well as Simon from Cult Effects, and this was a collab between the two of them. And I loved it. I thought it was a great distortion, still do. It's really cool. But they decided to make a couple of tweaks with that and release this version 2, which, I love the new Lichtlaerm artwork they put on that. I do love Daniel's aesthetic with the black and the gold. The gold is just so cool with all the different graphics that they put on these pedals. But they wanted to make a couple of tweaks. And what are those differences, really, especially since the first one was so good? Well, they had gotten some feedback that the pedal was pretty dry, like the distortion was pretty dry while it was good. It didn't get super saturated. And that was really down to when they were voicing it. I mean, Simon, he liked to, what he told me anyways, he liked to stack this onto an amp that already had some gain. So it having like a ton of gain on its own didn't really, cross his mind. So they added more gain to start with. It definitely gets saturated more. There's a little bit of some changes to its kind of voicing as well. You'll notice that it is a bit of a different gain structure. And I think all of those tweaks are for the best. It's a little less dry. It can definitely get nastier and chuggier. But if you still want it to be super tight and dry, it can absolutely do that. So basically, I think that they just improved on something that I consider to be one of the best distortion pedals I'd ever used in my life. Now, I'm demoing the Lichtlaerm version. There is also going to be a Cult Effects version. They're exactly the same, except one is going to look a little bit different. Now, like I said, it's going to have the same features as the original. They just made some tweaks. So you have the bypass, you have that extra, switchable boost on there, which essentially has a control for how much of the boost is hitting the distortion, and then a range knob for kind of essentially the tone of it. So the more you turn it up, the brighter everything gets. Of course, you have your gain. You do have a tight knob, which is something that's pretty ubiquitous at this point with Lichtlaerm, so you can tighten up that low end to where you want it or loosen it up as well. Of course, the volume knob, it does have its own built-in gate that's pretty damn powerful. I'm not sure why you would need it all the way up to the top. I guess if you were gain stacking, had this with a bunch of like fuzz and distortion, you would definitely need it to go that high, but I'm pretty good with it not being turned up very much. But it's a great functioning gate. And then of course its EQ section, instead of just being a 3-band EQ or a tone knob, is split up into 5 faders across a graphic EQ. So you have low, low mid, mid, high mid, and the high control. Now that's what makes this thing so powerful, because you have all control over that low end. Again, if you want to tighten things up or thicken it up, I actually like kind of messing with this and the tight control. So everything feels full in the palm mutes, but is still tight. And you can really get a good balance between the two. The low mid control is great because scooping that off gets rid of all of those boxy, honky, terrible mids that you don't want for a metal tone. And the more you scoop it, the more 90s death metal it becomes. The mid control, obviously, you can also scoop that or boost that a little bit depending on where you want things or where the natural mid range is on your amp. The upper mid, the high mid, is going to be where the kind of pick attack and aggression and cut lives. So I definitely, just like with the last one, like boosting that up a bit. That gets you the cut and the aggression in the mix, as well as it just sounds better that way. It gets more present, it gets more in your face. And then of course the high control, if you need more or less brightness, that control is actually really good if you decide to use this as a preamp. It wasn't really intended to be that way, but they found with the first one, it just kind of works really good. All you have to do is boost up that high control for some more top end and you're good to go. So that's all the features. Now we did hear this inside of a mix, both as a distortion pedal and as a preamp, because I had done that last time and I wanted to kind of show off how it sounds in a mix doing both again. This was going into the front of my Freeman BE50 Deluxe for the distortion, and it was going into its effects loop to be a preamp. Now we're going to hear it going into that same amplifier for the same setup. For when I'm playing around with all the knobs and kind of sounds, we're just going to really hear it as a distortion pedal. But in the out of mix as well, we're also going to hear it compared to the original Total Distortion Worship, so you can hear the differences in voicings and saturation. And that'll be going as a distortion pedal again into the front of my BE50 Deluxe, and it's also going to be going into the loop, so we can kind of go back and forth and hear the differences with these as a preamp as well, so we can thoroughly compare them. And then all of that is going to be going into my 2Notes Captor X, which does have a DV77 and VM1265 IR blend, my own personal one. And then, of course, I'm going to be plugging into this with my RIP Star Destroyer, which has a Fishmanfluence Modern in the bridge, which is exactly what I used to demo the original Total Distortion Worship. And I believe Simon from Cult Effects dug the guitar so much he ended up picking up his own Star Destroyer. So, killer. Glad I'm influencing some people with this absolutely stellar guitar. You all need one. It's awesome. It is absolutely as awesome as it looks. But that's enough talking about all the features. Let's actually hear this thing. Let's mess around with it. So as you can hear, there are definitely some differences between this and the original Total Distortion Worship, and I think they're all for the best, really. I like that it has more gain saturation. I like the changes in the voicing. I feel like I can definitely get death metal and 90s death metal even faster and better now. I just think overall, every change was a good decision, and they improved on what I consider to be one of the best distortion pedals ever, and now it's even better. I'm glad that Lichtlaerm did send this over. Super appreciative they let me check this out. But I'd be, curious to know what your thoughts were. Did you dig it more or less? Do you have the original? Have you been interested in one of these? Do you like the changes in the voicing? Anything like that, put it in the comments down below. But I will have a link down to this if you guys want to check it out yourself. But thanks for watching. Stay metal.